Good afternoon, Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. 540-0580, call in with your legal questions. Okay, what do I want to update you about before we get started here? And remember, whatever you want to know about, just call in. And mainly keep it legal. We'll answer your legal questions. You want to talk about some jury service you've done. You heard during the news break there, they're kicking jurors off of juries for looking things up on the Internet, for using their Facebook, all kinds of crazy things. With that in mind, by the way, I did post a picture of the Clear Channel break room refrigerator to my Facebook page. If anybody wants to see what I found there today, it's up. Also, wanted to toot my own horn a little bit because yesterday we were able to get a case dismissed because the government filed a faulty appeal. Long and short of it, had a client charged in a drug case. Whether they were innocent or guilty, we were going to take a trial and fight for our innocence. But in the meantime, the government filed an appeal of a ruling that they weren't happy with, which they couldn't do. And I knew they couldn't do it, but they did it anyhow. And they tied the case up for 14 months on appeal. And guess what? You have to bring a person to trial within a year. And usually the time on appeal is not count against the government because otherwise it would be impossible to bring people into trial in a reasonable time period. But because they negligently did it, so it's the equivalent of malpractice, basically. The government lawyers committed malpractice, filed a faulty appeal, and ended up violating my client's speedy trial rights. And now I don't have to go to trial on Monday in Cumberland County because the case is dismissed under Rule 600. So sometimes you win them on a technicality, and if you can, you do. It's always better and safer than a trial. That said, people want to know where I'm going to be. I'm going to be in Lancaster, courtroom number 3, of the Lancaster County Courthouse at 9 a.m. To start jury selection. So if you want to see anything interesting, I'm sure it won't actually get going until afternoon time or maybe even Tuesday morning. So watch for my Twitter feeds to keep you updated. But if you want to see a good trial, come to the Lancaster County Court. It's, like I say, courtroom number 3, 9 a.m. Monday. And I'd be happy to have you in the audience. And just let me know you're there during a break, and I'll give you a little heads up on what's going on. Mary Jo, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580. What's going on, Mary Jo?
Hi, I just had a quick question. Actually, I have two questions. The first one is, after my husband passed away, my daughter and I refinanced the house, and I put her name on it.
Okay.
Now, she's thinking about getting married. Does she need to do a prenup agreement to keep us from not having to ever worry about that issue?
Well, that's an interesting question. That would be property she would bring to the marriage, so it would be non-marital property. Okay. And assuming that he didn't move in with you guys right away, I mean, in other words, they're going to get their own house or go live somewhere else. I think
they're going to stay here.
You're going to stay there?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that's going to convert it to marital property either. He's going to probably try to make an argument at some point that, well, I paid some bills and I did some things around the house and I squared up the picture frames, and all those things, so I should be entitled to something.
Uh-huh.
Prenups are always
get the prenup, huh?
Prenups are always the best legal option in all cases. It's just that there's that awkward moment when you say, I think, honey, we should have a prenup, and then the rest of the conversation goes downhill from there.
Yeah. Well, I figured I would address it for her.
I'll tell you where prenups are very popular. I find that I get couples that are more than happy to do prenups when they already have been married once and have a family of older children.
Yeah.
And each side wants to make sure that the children are adequately taken care of. And they also kind of do it because sometimes there's not parity between the relative wealths of the parties, and they want to make it clear to all the kids that, this isn't about money, this is about love, and everything's going to stay the same for you kids, so treat the new spouse with respect.
Okay, I'll definitely take care of that. Now, I have another question for you. My husband, he liked to gamble, so he had pretty good bit of winnings and lots of losses I would be claiming on this year's taxes if I do them together. Is there any way I could disassociate myself from his?
Yeah, I don't think there's any requirement that you guys file together, and in fact, what I would recommend you do is see a CPA about the best way to do that. But if you open an estate for him, then certainly the estate's going to have to file the income tax. On the other hand, if you don't have to open an estate for him for whatever reason, then I would talk with the CPA about the best way to handle that.
Okay. Well, actually what happened, we did have a lawyer, and he took care of a lot of things for us. And as far as the estate goes, there wasn't anything there that was worth worrying about, so that kind of like was a wash.
Right, so you didn't open an estate, which is typical in a lot of marriage situations when one spouse dies. So the next question is if there's no estate, you have no personal duty to file his taxes, I don't think. But I would talk to the CPA about that.
Okay. Boy, I sure appreciate your help, and thank you.
No problem. And always takes those tax questions to the CPA because they stay up and current on all the ever-changing laws and regs that apply.
Okay. I will definitely do that.
Thanks, Mary Jo.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
540-0580, Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. And, of course, throughout the week, you can go to weekendappointment.com and post your questions. I got a few I got to answer on there that have popped up in the last couple of days. I've been a little busy, but I'm going to get to them today. Also, I want to make sure everybody knows we had a big argument in the United States Supreme Court. It looks like the Second Amendment will be applied to the states here shortly. When that happens, it's going to be a whole new ball game about gun rights. And so those of you out there who've been wondering about how to get your gun rights back, it might not help many of you, but it may help a lot of you. So it's all going to be done on a case-by-case basis. But we're going to be arguing right away that a lot of these minor misdemeanors brought through the Lautenberger Amendment, for instance, should no longer be bars on your gun ownership once this is applied to the states. Nick, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Yes, how you doing, Carl?
Good.
I asked you this question yesterday. I just want to make sure. I moved to Stilton, and I had a lot of trouble there, so I moved out, and I moved down to Highspire to a smaller apartment, and they condemned it saying it was too cluttered. And I was put in the hospital at the same time, and now I'm getting an old electric bill saying I owe for the time I was in the hospital, and they cleaned out my apartment while I was in the hospital, so I don't think I'm liable for that old electric bill.
Right, and I think you were on Bob Durgan with me yesterday.
Yes,
you called into Bob's show while Bob had me on, and what I told you was if you were evicted and you're no longer a resident of that apartment, you shouldn't be responsible for any utilities for a time period when you are no longer a resident of that apartment. Now, it's not the landlord's fault if you moved out for medical reasons. It's got to be when the actual landlord-tenant relationship was severed. Okay?
Okay, what's that mean?
Meaning if he actually evicted you or essentially kicked you out,
right.
And the landlord-tenant relationship ends, that's the magic date that you draw the line in the sand in. On the other hand, if I rent an apartment from you in January and in February 15th, I have to go to the hospital, and I'm in the hospital till March 3rd. That's not the landlord's problem. That's my problem, just like if it was my own house.
Right.
But on the other hand, if on March 1st the landlord kicks me out, then I just owe for February, and he can't bill me for March's utilities. Okay, my friend?
Okay, one more thing about this gun law.
Yeah.
I'm bipolar, and years ago I went to apply for a gun, and I said I wasn't in the hospital when I was.
Right.
I got charged for it, and I had to pay a fine and had to go to court.
Yeah, well, that may be a disabling offense. Also, having had mental health issues, that sometimes can be a basis for the government. Although it's going to be a whole new ballgame. So my advice to you is wait until that new decision comes out and then explore it then.
Okay.
Got to go to break. 540-0580, 540-0580. There are times that I thank God that there's glass between me and Shane, and I just had one of those moments. 540-0580, 540-0580. Call in with your legal questions. And, of course, go to weekendappointment.com. And, I got that Twitter feed that I've been using to throw some things out there. So hopefully when I'm in trial, we'll be able to update you as to what's going on so you can stop in. As of right now, 9 a.m. in the Lancaster County Courthouse. I'll make sure the details go out as soon as I have more of them for you. But I have a feeling there'll be a bunch of motions to litigate because there always are before trials start. And talking about trials, my associate Mike Palermo is getting ready to start the defense portion of the Bonus Gate trial, which, of course, I still can't talk to you about because of the fact that, we're involved as a firm in it. I've been over to watch a little of it. And, of course, you can follow the Twitter feed on that on Twitter on a daily basis where they have real-time stream coming from it as to what's going on. And if you really think you know what's going on in the Bonus Gate case and you're reading the newspaper, you got to get to the Twitter feeds. You get an even better picture. It's not going to be exactly what the jury's getting, but it is a much better picture than you get out of the newspapers because they're so constrained for space. Whereas when they have 3 or 4 people in there twittering in real time, you catch You catch what's going on just almost as it happens, literally. Dave, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. How are you?
Yeah, hey, Carl. Reference the lady who called about her deceased husband and doing her taxes. Unfortunately, I lost my wife, and I had to do that. The advantage of filing his taxes is, and she can check with her CPA, is that you there's a provision that you are a qualified widow or widower for 3 years, and it counts as being a married couple for 3 years. So there's a big tax advantage by filling out that form. And the form says it's a final form for the deceased person, and the state had the same situation, and it made a lot more economically made a much better situation.
Well, I hope she's still listening.
Yeah, so just so you're aware of that.
Yeah, and that's why, and you'll notice what I said is talk to the CPA, talk to the CPA, talk to the CPA, because
I understand. The other thing that people don't understand, especially if they live in the Harrisburg area, is there's a IRS office at the federal courthouse downtown in Harrisburg, and those people are just great to talk to.
And probably just stop right in and ask them a question.
You can stop right in, and you may have to, this is tax season, so you may have to wait a little bit, but they do a real good job.
Okay. Hey, thank you very much for the heads up, my friend.
No problem. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Anytime. Bye.
All right. And that's one of the great things when you have an audience out here. A lot of times everybody has a little piece of expertise. So if you know something and you want to share it, feel free to call in. I highly encourage that. It makes the show much more useful because I didn't know that. 540-0580, 540-0580. Earl, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. Earl.
Hello, Carl. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Question for you. Over the past year, I've lost about half my income, and I'm in a position where I really can't financially deal with keeping the house and stuff like that. So my wife and I have discussed about moving. I mean, I'm working full-time now. But what advantage or disadvantage if I just tell the company that's holding the mortgage, I said, I can't do this anymore? What would happen if they ended up foreclosing on me? What would be my responsibilities?
If you're foreclosed upon, in a foreclosure, basically what happens is they go to the court, they file an action, and they take title to the property. In doing so, they have to have a foreclosure sale, and then they can bid on it themselves, or alternatively, they can sell it at the foreclosure sale. But if they sell it at a foreclosure sale, which not to themselves, because they're going to bid it up to exactly what they owe, or are owed at least, to protect themselves. But if it sells for more than what's owed at the foreclosure sale, then you're entitled to that surplus. Most of the time, it sells for less than what's owed, at which time they will come after you for what's called a deficiency judgment.
Okay.
And if that's the case, then you're going to end up in a position where there's now a money judgment against you that's no longer secured against the house, so it's just like a bad credit card debt. Just hanging over your head. I was just telling a friend, they don't do garnishing of wages in Pennsylvania, so they can't garnish your wages, but they could have a sheriff come and execute and try to take your color TV and stuff like that.
Okay. Do those companies generally, if you would ask for relief from any of those, if it's less than? If it's
There's a couple of things that are done. One's called deed in lieu of foreclosure. That's where I write a deed over to the bank or the mortgage holder, and in lieu of foreclosure, they simply accept the deed and forgive all the debt, or remaining debt, I should say. The other way to do it is to list it with a realtor and have the realtor attempt to do a short sale.
Okay.
And a short sale is just what it sounds like. There's not enough money there to make the total owed, so it's short, and they can consent to a short sale. And they agree to allow the title and release the mortgage, even though they're not being paid off 100%. They like the short sale option because the deed in lieu of foreclosure means it becomes a bank-owned property.
Okay. That's what I was thinking of doing, is putting the house up for sale and trying. I mean, I've already got in contact with the mortgage company. I said, look, I can't pay what the original mortgage is. I will pay, because I went through a hardship with them last year. But that ended in the end of 2009, and I've attempted to get another hardship. But at the meantime, I'm still responsible for paying the original mortgage, and I just told them I can't do that. I'm going to pay a payment that was as amounts to the hardship until I can sell. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen.
Right.
So okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate the information.
Hey, no problem. Take care, Earl.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
540-0580, 540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. If you're just joining us, I'm an attorney who practices here throughout the mid-state, and I'm always happy to answer your legal questions here on the air. Or you can post them on weekendappointment.com, where, of course, if you become a registered member, and it's free, you can download a will kit and get a free will. And that's a real will, one that I actually sit down and do with you, and I wrote some more of those this past week. Seems like we're doing a few every week, so feel free to jump on board and do that if you haven't. If you already have a will but you want to just have it checked out, I'll do that for you as well, and we'll update it if it needs it. I tell people you should look at your will at least every 5 years, although odds are much hasn't changed, and your will's probably valid even when you wrote quite a long time ago. You never know if the lawyer used some particular language that's fallen out of favor, or if maybe you haven't really looked at your will in a long time and maybe some of what you wanted to do or some of the things you mentioned in the will aren't really relevant anymore and might just lend to confusion. John, you're on WHP 580.
Hi, Carl. The gentleman you just had on, you were saying about with the foreclosure?
Yeah.
And what could happen to him? Well, there's one thing that I don't know if you're aware of, but if they do the short sale on that and come after him with a judgment, it will also affect his driving rights. His driver's license will be suspended.
If he, I thought they could only do that if it was involving an auto accident for the
any judgment, they will come after you. They will suspend your driving rights, which means that even though he's trying to do the right thing and go back and forth to work so he can pay the bills, he won't be able to go back and forth to pay the bills because a cop can stop him and nail him for driving with a suspended license.
Now, I'm going to have to do a little research on that because I thought that the judgment could only that the prothonotary.
I work with it every day, sir. I know it.
Okay. So you're going to tell me that. All right, I did not know that. I thought that was only on car accidents. So there's another. Is that a separate subsection?
No, any judgment they can go after you for that.
I did not know that. Never had anybody. Usually it comes up in the car accident cases. That's why I wondered about that.
No, they'll come after you for a judgment. They'll come after you for child support.
I knew about child support. I knew child support does it.
Yeah, they'll come after you for judgments, too.
Child support, they take your hunting license away if they can, too. So.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I appreciate that. You know what I'm going to have to do, though, now I feel like an idiot, so I got to look this up and find. You don't happen to know the subsection that they do that under, do you?
Offhand, I don't remember it.
If you find it or come across it before I do, post it on weekendappointment.com because I want to increase my knowledge.
No problem.
All right, my friend. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Goodbye.
Yep, there you go. Gene, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Carl?
Yeah.
Hi, it's Gene. I spoke with you, back in October, November about a trailer in Annville.
Yeah.
Okay. The landlord has not responded since I sent him the certified letter. My question is, how long can he wait to take me to court if he wants to over that?
Well, theoretically, I mean, he has a statute of limitations for breach of contract of 4 years.
4 years.
But the longer it takes, the less likely it is he's actually going to pursue it.
Oh, okay. That was basically my question because I've kept all the documentation and copies of the emails.
Yeah, hold on to all of it. And I always say that the longer – now, like a car accident has a 2-year statute of limitations. Breach of contract has 4. Sometimes like defamation has a 1-year statute of limitations. There are other statutes as well. But I always tell people, even a DUI, if the police pull you over for DUI, they actually have up to 2 years to charge you with the crime. But the reality is, as time moves on, you're usually gonna hear something in the first couple of months when there's a discrete incident like a car accident or something. But you have to be prepared that theoretically out at the end of the statute of limitations, and we do see lawsuits filed at the 3 years and 364 days. It's not very common, though.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
All right, good luck.
Bye.
Let's see here. Who's next? Brenda, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580. What's going on, Brenda?
Hey, I just wanted to give you a heads up on that judgment.
Yeah.
A judgment is filed with the pathonetary, and the only way they can take their license away if it involves a motor vehicle. Now, we haven't gotten any change on law as far as taking a judgment in from the DJ level and suspending their license because they didn't pay on the judgment. That only applies if accident in a motor vehicle was involved, that they can retrieve their license from them.
I thought I was right about that, and
yep.
And
they have 60 days to do it, you know.
And
I mean, it's there's a waiting period anyway. It's 60 days.
Okay. And I know Brenda, and I know she's an expert on these things.
So they're like, no, they don't take their license for a mortgage, you know, for not paying on a mortgage payment.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. And like I say, I know you know the answer better than anybody that could possibly call in. So.
Right. And when they take that motor vehicle thing, we give them a certificate of a motor vehicle off of the judgment. So, okay.
All right. Hey, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I feel vindicated now. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Have a good day.
Bye. Yeah, you get the feeling I might know Brenda, huh? Let's see here. 540-0580. I'll see you after the break. 540-0580. Carl Rominger here on WHP 580 coming back to you. And I was working a business plan out during the break with Shane. You know, they used to have, they used to say that some lawyers are like ambulance chasers, and they follow the ambulance around looking for an accident. And I was telling Shane that we're going to start accompanying Big Ben around, particularly into like ladies' rooms and nightclubs and places like that, just to look for the lawsuits as they occur.
You think you pay us?
Well, you know, that's the question. We've got to work the business plan out. Are we going to represent the alleged assaultees or the alleged assaultor?
It'd be like doing it with Tiger Woods' assaultees.
Well, yeah,
assaultors.
I would rather represent, I think, the assaultor, though, be on a steady salary, because if they behave themselves, there might not be a lot of work. So I guess it's better just to get a contract. Anyhow, a little Pittsburgh Steelers humor there for you, because I like the Buffalo Bills. Mike, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. Mike.
Yes. I had a question about the judgment on the foreclosures. And I guess what I was wondering was, if you're already, like, say, in a bankruptcy, does that affect it in any way? Or
you're already in bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And repeat the beginning of that question so I understand.
Well, you know, I had filed for bankruptcy that, you know, I mean, we had some hardships, and then the house was foreclosed upon afterwards. And I was just wondering if...
During the bankruptcy they foreclosed on it, or after the bankruptcy was over?
After I'd filed for bankruptcy.
Okay.
And it was, well, it would have even been after we had to go to the courthouse in Harrisburg.
Is your bankruptcy attorney aware of the foreclosure?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, the short answer is that usually what they'll do in that case is the foreclosure will result in the house going to the bank, and then the bankruptcy will discharge you most likely from any surplus debt, most likely, unless it's in a Chapter 13, and then you'll be repaying at least a portion of that potentially. But it's going to depend on what your bankruptcy attorney does with the case.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah, thanks.
All right, no problem. 540-0580. Make sure you go to weekendappointment.com and register. Also, I think I announced on the email a new contest we're going to do. You know, we've been giving away some gift certificates to any dummy who knows how to register. But we're going to make it a little more complicated now. You have to go and register at weekendappointment.com, and then we want to hear your stories. So you go to the section on the PA courts, and I want to hear your best courtroom stories or almost courtroom stories, or how you beat up on the district justice or whatever, and post it on there, and then we'll pick the best one amongst them.
What if I don't have a courtroom story?
Well, if you've never actually been to court, that's why I say your almost courtroom story, like how you were going to sue your neighbor, or you know, how you told the police officer off on the side of the road or whatever. And, oh, yeah, by the way, folks, I do have that videotape of my own traffic stop late at night, and it's mine to publish right now, but it's about 20 minutes long, and those nice people over at YouTube want the video at 10 minutes. So what we're going to do probably is make a YouTube version and then the original source version, because there's enough time in there where the sound's off and the police are just rustling around in the car trying to think up reasons to arrest me that just don't seem to work. So we'll go ahead and get that for you, but it's coming still. We're still working on it. Doug, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Carl.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Doug. April this year will be 3 years. I had a accident on 81 involving a tractor trailer.
Okay.
I'm still waiting to get paid for my vehicle. I
Three.
guess the long and the short story is I was on 81 and somebody cut me off. I slammed on my brakes. A tractor trailer come up behind me and creamed me, pushed me across 81 down in the embankment, flipped me over, and I ended up on the other side of 81.
Right.
Well, it's been 3 years, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I mean, I have a lawyer.
Did he sue? Did he file a writ?
Well, without getting into too many particulars, you know him very well. My point is, it's been 3 years. The guy that I hit got paid.
Right.
The cop made up a fictitious statement, lied. I got that tossed out of court. I got my money back because they fined me. And now I'm going after an out-of-state trucking company that, every time I talk to my lawyer, it's the same thing. They want to offer me like pennies on the dollar, and 3 years later, I'm still waiting for a vehicle.
Yeah, it sounds like it's time to list it for arbitration and just force the issue.
Well, that's what my lawyer for the last 2 years have supposed to have been doing.
Huh.
And I don't want to say who he is. You know him very well.
Okay, send me an email, Doug, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, well, I tried to call your office last week, and the secretary has kind of handled me around and wouldn't let me at least voicemail you.
Yeah, they get a little feisty sometimes. Probably she wanted you to just set up a phone appointment with me. But why don't you email me? You can get that off weekend.
She wanted me to talk to the lawyer that is in charge of the case already.
Okay. Get me an email, Doug. It's off of weekendappointment.com, okay?
I will. And another just quick back in 1998 I got a DUI and I lost my gun rights. I absolutely lost my gun rights. I cannot own a gun or hunt in the state of Pennsylvania.
Now, that would have been a second offense DUI, so Correct. It was an M1?
Correct.
And here's the answer. We were talking about that new decision that's going to be coming out.
Uh-huh.
And it's going to say that the Second Amendment is incorporated through the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment on the states. And it's going to say, because right now there's a federal law that says you can't own guns if you have an M1. And nobody knows yet, but it seems like, depending on what they say there, we may be able to challenge the use of a misdemeanor offense.
Because it is a misdemeanor.
Right, as a basis.
Right.
And so you may have hope.
Yeah. Well, I hope so, because as the world turns, I think everybody needs a gun now.
And I think, though, here's the bad news. The bad news is it's not going to happen instantly. There's probably going to be 3 or 4 or 5 years worth of litigation until we start to sort out exactly how the courts are going to structure that.
Well, the thing of it is when your second offense, you do a little time in jail, and what they what they do is they give you like a 30 days to a year or whatever. I forget what the time was. It was very short.
Right.
And they used that. They made me sign off my rights in prison.
Right.
They pulled me out of my cell and made me go down there and sign my rights off as to own a gun. And if I did not do that, I was breaching my probation.
Right.
That's just wrong.
Right, and they do that. You're right. They do that without a doubt. Although sometimes they do say, and I know there's some theory that part of the reason that they want you to sign off on that is so you acknowledge it, because there's a lot of folks who, after they've had a criminal episode and have not been informed, end up owning a firearm and then end up in a position where they're a person not to possess, and mistake of fact is okay, but mistake of law is not. And if you didn't know you were somebody who wasn't allowed to own a firearm, you could potentially be guilty under the federal statute. So,
I gotcha. So, and what if it was my wife's gun?
Well, yeah, and the answer is your wife can have guns.
But I can't fire it.
Right. You can't even hold it. You can't even intend to exercise control over it, which makes it kind of problematic, because if it's sitting on the kitchen table, there's always a theory that the government can accuse you of having, and I've seen this done. In fact, I got I should say acquittal, because it was 10-2 to acquit.
Right.
2 wanted to convict, 10 wanted to acquit, but the government dropped the charges at that point. Where a guy was at a house where his buddy brought a gun over because his buddy was hunting deer and staying over there, and the gun was in the house when the police went there on a warrant to look for marijuana, which, of course, there was no marijuana.
Right.
Imagine that. But they found the gun, and they said, oh, well, you're a felon not to possess. And he's like, yeah, so my buddy who lives upstairs in one of the rooms, that's his gun up.
Right.
And so
Didn't work.
anyhow, he had to go through a whole trial just to be acquitted of that.
Well, I was thinking about getting a hold of the NRA and seeing what I can do there or something.
Well, and trust me, they're waiting. They've been working. Sometimes you wonder what's going on behind the scenes. Well, the NRA and the other gun groups have been working carefully in the court system over the years, and you can see that it started to bear some fruit. We got the Heller decision. We're going to get it incorporated out of the Chicago decision. And the next question is, once you've made it a fundamental right and you've made it apply to the states, wait till you see the floodgates of litigation open.
Good. All right. Well, you have a wonderful weekend, man.
All right, Doug. Take care.
All right, I'll get on there.
All right. Give me an email, Doug.
I will. All right. Bye.
540-0580, 540-0580. What Doug was expressing some frustration about, I think, is the idea that a lot of times these insurance companies just don't want to pay what something's worth. The flip side is sometimes the expense of litigation is a detriment. So when there's no personal injury and you're just talking about the value of a car and you're only off by a couple $1,000s, doing additional litigation sometimes just doesn't pay at the end of the day. So it's always problematic. So hopefully he'll send me an email. He and I can talk, and we'll figure out what's going on. In the meantime, make sure you stop by weekendappointment.com yourself, register, and post one of those stories that we're talking about. We're going to offer some gift certificates to people who post interesting legal stories or legal events in their life or actual courtroom battles they've been in. I'd really like to hear about people's adventures in the district justice offices, if you've had to fight your own speeding ticket or maybe how you negotiated one. Also, I want to remind you, you can go to Facebook. WHP 580 has a page there, and you should make sure you become a fan of it if you're not already. I'm a fan of the page, and I do post some stuff on there from time to time. And, of course, you can friend me as well. Amy, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Hi.
Hey.
I just have a question for you, and I don't know if you will know the answer to this. My boyfriend got a misdemeanor 3, and, of course, it was a violation of his parole. The judge sentenced him to 1 to 3 to run concurrent with the number that he has.
Okay.
He goes in front of the parole board, and they said, no, we're not doing that. You're going to serve out the rest of your current number, and then we'll give you a new number.
Right. And they said the judge made it concurrent with whatever he was currently serving, and the parole board said no.
The parole board said no. So
and
basically what he has to do is serve 3 years to run out his first number and then turn around and serve the 1 to 3 with a new number for a misdemeanor.
Right, and that's been a sticky issue because I believe if I have, and I haven't researched this recently, but I thought last I knew the judge is not binding upon the state parole board. In other words, once he gives a state sentence, what the judge should have done was keep it county or not make it into a state sentence so they couldn't aggregate it. So he should have kept it as a county sentence and ran it concurrent, and I think that would have prevented it. But once you have 2 state sentences, if I'm quoting the law right, as I think I am, because this has come up a few times, and sometimes though the state will honor it.
They said that they don't have to. If they don't want to.
That's correct. So you can have the judge recommend it and ask for it. And I've actually seen a letter one time that went back to the judge in a case I was involved. It said, "Dear Judge, just so you know, we don't have to honor this. We are going to, but it was kind of a polite letter saying you really can't tell us what to do, even if you are the judge. Thank you, sir."
Okay, so there's really nothing that I can help him because he can't do anything while he's in.
How long ago was he sentenced?
Probably 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Then it's probably a sealed deal. I was going to say if he's within 1 year of his sentencing, I mean, at least he might have a PCRA vehicle available to him, and if he is told one thing and it's part of the plea agreement, he might be able to figure out how to refinagle it. But even that would be very unlikely to be successful. If he was within 10 days of sentencing. So put this in the back of your head, Amy, and this is mainly for just the rest of the world, not you, but if you're within, if somebody's been sentenced and you're unhappy with the sentence or the result, and of course he didn't find out about this till farther down the road, I'm sure.
Right. So he went in front of the parole board.
Right. So he's quite a ways down the road from the sentence time. If you're unhappy with a sentence or a result, you only have 30 days to appeal, but you only have 10 days to file a motion to modify the sentence. And that's for any discretionary aspect of the sentence. So people need to make sure that if the friend or loved one is unhappy with the result, that they get to a lawyer immediately and not wait around, because sometimes you have as short as 10 days from the time of sentencing, and otherwise you'll forever not be able to modify certain portions of that.
Yeah, because he did do an appeal to the parole board and went 1 year after he got in there, because that's the soonest that they would allow him
Right.
to see them, and they said no again.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if they could do that or not.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Amy, thank you very much. I got to go to break here.
All right, thanks. Have a good weekend.
All right, you too. 540-0580. I'll see you after the break. Hey, Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. 540-0580 is the talk line number. If you have a legal question, legal concern, you want to talk about something, feel free to call in. If you want to contribute, you want to straighten some things out. One person tried to straighten me out one way, and the other person came to my defense the other way. I think I'm going back to my original thought that it is only the telephone. Telephone. Shane, I was going to tell you the telephone thing is going down here, but I think it's back up. The screen went down for a second. Anyhow, no, it is only a car which can be the result of a judgment. So in your vehicular accident and you don't pay your financial responsibility, then they can certify that off to PennDOT. And the lady we had call in, I happen to know, is an expert in those things because that's what she does for a living. So I think I was right about that, although I think the other fellow might be thinking about things like other kinds of things like child support, where he is right. A child support judgment can be used to block all kinds of things. It can be used to intercept your tax return. And I want to remind you guys again, there's going to be new guidelines coming out for child support. So we'll be talking more about those when they're actually launched. And I'm going to be putting together a little more information on it. So I'm going to email that out. So make sure you're a registered member at weekendappointment.com. So when we do email alerts about major changes in the law, you can get those. I did have a question on there, too, posted by a user the other day, want to know about getting rid of a criminal background. And it was one of these deals. Her husband, back when he was 18, he got himself into some kind of trouble, pled guilty to some offenses, and now he's 40 years old and unable to get a firearm. And she looked up for me what he was charged with, and I can see that he was charged with criminal conspiracy to criminal trespass and theft by unlawful taking. Well, criminal conspiracy to criminal trespass, it's the same grading as the criminal conspiracy is always the same grading as the underlying charge. So if it was a conspiracy to murder, it's the same grading as murder. If it's a conspiracy to DUI, I'm not sure how that would work, but if it was a conspiracy to DUI, it would be the same grading, a misdemeanor of whatever the underlying offense is. So it was criminal conspiracy to criminal trespass. Criminal trespass is a felony 3, which makes it a felony, which means he'll probably never be able to own a firearm. Now, here's what happened. Back in 1980, whatever, when he was advised by the attorney, he was a young guy, went to court. The attorney probably said, listen, I know you got a good defense, and I know you're telling me you didn't actually take this stuff, and you didn't know your friend didn't have permission to be there, but I've worked out a deal for you. You're going to plead to conspiracy, and then the theft thing, judge is going to give you probation 1 year. You're going to pay some fines. You're going to pay some costs and put it behind you. And a lot of times that's how people deal with criminal problems, even if they didn't do it. Now, here's the problem. 20X years later, it's still cropping up, causing him trouble. Won't let him buy a firearm. Sooner or later, he's going to find out somebody won't let him have a job because of it. It's going to be used against him other ways. So if you, a friend, or a loved one are faced with criminal charges, you've got to be very aggressive about making sure that you either get them discharged or get found innocent, which really just means you weren't found guilty, or negotiate a plea agreement that's designed not to have all these long-lasting consequences. And I find that a lot of people enter into, and I sit in the back of courtrooms sometimes, listening to cases in front of me, and I hear what people are pleading to, and I hear the facts recited, and I often think, what on earth are they thinking? How is that guy pleading guilty to that under those factual circumstances? Or why is that guy taking a felony that's clearly not the felony? And if you think the judge is just going to stand up and scream and say, don't let that guy enter that plea, it's inappropriate, it's not right, it doesn't seem fair, maybe a judge will do that once in a while, but for the most part, the judge is assuming that the defendant, the district attorney, and counsel have a reason for why they're doing what they're doing, and isn't going to make a very deep inquiry into it or not. Some judges do, but some courtrooms operate like factories, particularly in bigger jurisdictions where they just need to push cases through one after the other to dispose of them. So don't let yourself get railroaded into a lifetime of problems. And I guess that's my little editorial, because I'm going to have to post a response to this gal and let her know that her husband is not going to be able to clear up his record, because there's this other myth out there, and we get calls endlessly at the office. I want to expunge my record. You can't expunge a record if you pled guilty, okay? You can't expunge a record if you pled guilty. You can't expunge a record if you're found guilty. So don't plead guilty if you don't have to. Also, I have to do a little warning out there. District attorney I know was talking to me on Thursday, and he said, hey, one of your radio listeners was trying to withdraw his guilty plea for a DUI because he wanted to run with that jury nullification thing you talked about on the radio. And I said, he must have misunderstood my nullification speech. Jury nullification is the idea that a juror doesn't have to find somebody guilty if they don't like the law, and the courts won't tell you you have that power, but you absolutely do. And I guess he thought maybe that the jurors were going to let him go from DUI because they think DUI should be legal. I don't think that. So if anybody out there in radio land thinks that I'm saying that a jury nullification argument would work with a DUI, you're crazy. The majority of us are all going to always agree that you shouldn't drink and drive, and nobody's ever going to sit back and go, I don't think this guy should be guilty of anything because I don't think drinking and driving should be illegal. Now, on the other hand, if we're talking about smoking marijuana and, your guy's got glaucoma in his left eye and brain cancer in the right hemisphere and polyps, and he needs to smoke marijuana in order to ease the pain, well, then some of the jurors might sit back and say, you know what, 10 other states have made this legal. Pennsylvania's got a stupid set of laws when it comes to marijuana, so we refuse to apply them. That one might be the winner. I mean, but I would never bank on a jury nullification argument. It's not allowed to be argued. The jury has to know about it themselves. So if you're out there in radio land and you're a defendant and you think that the jury's going to nullify a DUI, don't take that from what I've said. I think, is it possible that jurors will nullify things like marijuana possession or even possession with intent to distribute marijuana, depending on the facts and circumstances? Yeah, there's a great argument that some juries might nullify those things. But I don't see that happening with DUI. So I wanted to make sure I got the word out to that fella and anybody else who was thinking that. Now, of course, if you're on a jury and you want to nullify something, that's your absolute prerogative. And if you want to nullify a murder because you think it was a public service killing of some sort, I guess you're allowed to do that. But again, they're not going to tell you that. And so that was why I had led to that little joke that I had where I said, wouldn't it be funny if somebody raised their hand and said, hey, Judge, tell us about jury nullification, or you send out some written questions on jury. I think I would have fun if I was on a jury sending out written questions to the judge, designing them to be particularly testing to see what answers they would give on nullification, because they don't like to answer that question. They don't want you to know that. And then that led to a conversation. We were talking about the folks who stand around courthouses and hand out brochures on that. There's a group out there that does that. Well, that's the music at the end of the hour that tells me I have to go. I'm going to be in Lancaster County doing jury trials this week, so stop by. Follow the Twitter feed at weekendappointment.com for updates, and join me on Facebook and Twitter.